money isn't evil, but it is very dangerous. At its best, our financial resources are a tremendous responsibility. But at their worst, they're very dangerous. When we talk about money, when we look at the rich young man in the gospel today, I think it's important for us to begin by acknowledging that we are wealthy, that I am rich. I don't quite make what it would be required to be in the top 1% of global earners. But just, that's only $60,000. Best recent research I could find, 2023. 1% of top global earners requires you to be at the $60,000 range. That means that 99% of the world look at you as wealthy if you make $60,000. I know 60,000, 30,000 doesn't feel wealthy, but I don't know if you ever noticed that when you were making 30, 60 sure seemed wealthy, and if you're making 60 now, 120 is unthinkable wealth. But because money is dangerous, it's very possible that when you earn 120, when you've taken away time from family and compromised on some values and stayed in a job that you probably should have changed, and you're making 120, it won't feel wealthy anymore. By then it'll take 240. And this isn't just inflation. This isn't a change in the cost of eggs. That's its own problem. No, this is a change in our desires. And our unmet desires create a lot of angst. It becomes an addiction in our lives. It's interesting, as we go through life, so often we want more and more. And that's why money is dangerous. It's amazing. With little kids, you can bring them any gift, and they are so happy. But give them a handful of years, and if it's not Lululemon, it's not a gift. That as we grow in life, sometimes we build expectations and wants, and we turn them into needs, and we become miserable when we could be very happy. Sometimes we extend ourselves in ways that we find ourselves under financial pressure and in debt when we could be very happy. If you ask most couples when they were happiest, they would remember lovingly back to a time when there was way more month than paycheck, back to a time when they had to sacrifice together and struggle together to get through life, when that first pregnancy was scary, not because they weren't longing for a child, but because they didn't know how they were going to pay for formula or diapers. But they did. You did. And in a time when money's no longer the same kind of struggle, we run the risk of that money still making us miserable and unhappy because it's fed our appetites, our desires, our addictions. And so it might be helpful when we talk about the gospel of the rich young man to look for the antidotes to the dangerousness of money. How can I keep money, stuff, from taking over my life and taking over my heart, taking over my relationships, taking over my priorities, and then having unmet or even met appetites that get in the way of what really matters? And I would suggest that there are a few things that might help. The biggest is generosity. Sometimes I'll get what would appear to be a very generous gift, $1,000 from someone. But if you did the math, it would be the same as if you reached into the coin box in your car. In my car, it's an ashtray, but I don't think most cars have ashtrays anymore. And you took out a handful of quarters and nickels and gave them to me. As we live our lives, even if we keep giving, sometimes we become less generous because we don't give enough to feel the give. I know many of our parishioners who give on a monthly basis through our online giving, that they feel that gift, and that gift affects their overall finances in a way that makes them choose generosity. I am very careful in my life to give to the point that I feel my giving and in a way that has to affect my life so that I can choose generosity. Because generosity is a wonderful antidote to the dangers of stuff. The rich young man couldn't. He couldn't give away his things in order to embrace something better. But he might not be alone, and it would be a worthwhile examination of conscience to think about whether or not I can give. Many times a percentage giving is a good way to think about that. There is no real concept of tithing in our scriptures, right? That there's just an old story of a one occasion when somebody gave 10% of their stuff to a priest who blessed him. How nice. Jesus says that the woman who had 2 coins put them both into the collection basket. That God wants our whole lives. But most of our lives will not be put in a collection basket. We'll have to live those with God in much more complex and dangerous ways. But one of the ways to mitigate the danger to build generosity is to give on a percentage basis. But that percentage probably should grow as we become more financially capable. I would guess that most newly married couples shouldn't be giving anywhere close to 10% of their income, because 10% of $60,000 is only $6,000, but it leaves you with only 54 to build your life. But if you're making 200, you'll give a significantly larger sum of money, 20,000, but it leaves you with 180 to live your life. And if we said 500,000, the numbers get bigger, right? That a percentage is a good start, just to maintain a certain authenticity. Because if we start out giving $2,000 or $3,000 a year, and then when we're making 500,000, we're giving $2,000 or $3,000 a year, we're no longer being generous. My parents always thought that you should give about 5% to your parish and 5% to the other meaningful charities, the poor, other meaningful charities that they sought out and found. But that's not a rule, right? God wants us to be responsible for 100% of our stuff. But giving some away on purpose is a very good way to inoculate ourselves against some of the danger that stuff creates. There are other things we should consider, other ways to live a life that's not stuck like the rich young man's life was. But for today, we'll just say that a little bit of generosity might, for me and for you, go a long way.